Join Black Women Healing Podcast at the family reunion hosted by California Black Women's Health Project this Sunday, June 30th from 12 to 6 at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. That's this Sunday, y'all. This event is a celebration of Black health, Black culture, and Black community, which you know we stand for. There will be musical performances, wellness classes, free food, and more. Registration is required. To register, text 866 595 0061, or you can simply visit cabwhp.org. All these links will be in our bio. And the special thing, y'all, is that we will be having a live podcast. So from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., we will be live. Like, this is huge, so you don't want to miss it. We will see y'all there.
Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real. You just gotta take your time, unwind and chill. Cause now it's time to love yourself, build emotional and mental health. Cause Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real.
Hey y'all, we are back with another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. And as usual, we have a guest. But before we jump in, we're going to hit y'all with a this or that. So, Danica usually comes up with this, but it's me today. And so my this or that is audiobook or physical copy of the book. Danica, which one are you picking? I already know, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Yeah, I would pick the physical book every time. I actually never have listened to an audiobook, and I refuse to jump on the bandwagon. Let me not say refuse, because Myra, you do every time you talk about it, I'm like, maybe I should try, but I just like a tangible object in my hand. I like to just, reread it and not feel like on my eyes is like, sometimes if I'm reading, my eyes will sometimes feel a little, strained, but I feel like I look at a computer all the time, phones and stuff. The book just gives me a little break. I don't know. I just feel more connected to the book. So for me, it's going to be that physical copy every time. What about you, Myra?
Well, clearly you haven't had an audiobook written by the author, because I love a physical book, but if the author is going to read the book, baby, let me tell you, Confessions of a Video Vixen, listened to by, with Corinne Steffens reading it to you, it's very different versus reading the book. And let me tell y'all, that has had me like tapped in, because she's a good storyteller. First off, I give her that. She's a great storyteller. But listening to her read it, and even like Will Smith's book, Jada Pinkett, listening to them read it, it hits so different. So, KL, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a fan of a paper book, but when you are on the go, audio always is going to help for me so I can listen to it. And listening to it sometimes leads me to actually pick up the paper book.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Have you ever read the paper book but listened to the audiobook at the same time?
I have not.
Okay. I thought about doing that because I feel like it would hit differently. So I've been thinking about trying that out just to see like the feel that I get out of it.
Especially if they use the right voice, because voices have these special tones and it gets you completely engulfed in what you're reading. So, yeah,
Yes.
good idea.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, no. This is a push to try to listen to the audio. But before Myra introduces our very special guest, we get names right over here. So I want to make sure we're pronouncing your name right. Is it Khalilah?
100%. Yep.
Khalilah. Perfect. Okay.
Beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Khalilah, who goes by Dr. KO. Dr. KO is an expert in the field of human resources, leading a new effort that uses technology to change how we support justice-impacted talent. Among the formerly incarcerated herself, she brings a first-hand perspective to the fair chance hiring process. As former chief police officer for True Colors, she spearheaded a groundbreaking initiative to employ second chance hires and active gang members with the shared goal of unifying communities and reducing violence. KO is an accomplished author, speaker, and impact architect. So today we're going to be talking about how to build a life after being incarcerated. And Dr. KO, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about how your background shapes your current work. And you can share as much as you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, great question. A lot of times when we go through these painful moments, we think that it keeps us on pause, but oftentimes, at least I've learned that pain always produces purpose, right? And so it was through my past experiences where I realized that there were a lack of opportunity, there was a lack of access, and there was, there was this shame that you carry, when you serve time, or when you lose your name to a DIN number, that you, even when you're released after you've served your time, you still really aren't free unless you allow your mindset to be free, right? And so you may be physically free, but you're still in prison because you haven't built up the confidence that you need to keep going. And so it was, that family experience where things were really good, upper middle class, and alcoholism hit our house and things just changed, that led me to make this really big decision that I didn't realize was going to change the trajectory of my life. I often tell people I went up to live with my cousins, not because I wanted to get involved in the stuff they was doing, but because I was looking for a bed, right? I wanted a safe place to sleep. And as a woman, when you don't have any place to sleep, you have to often give things away that you may not want to give away. And I made the choice to go be with family, and it was that path that led me into serving time. And while I was there, I realized that the impact I wanted to make in my life wasn't just having a tall, dark, and fine, right, in a house with a picket fence and having kids and the dog. It was about making impact in the lives of others who may have had this really cool life and who was interested in education and learning, but something happened and you didn't think you had any other options but to end up in this place. And it was that thought, that idea of making impact in the lives of others that led me to do the work that I'm doing now. It wasn't immediate. I had to have the aha moment, but it's what led me there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I want to be clear, but I also don't want you to share it's too much. But so for as far as like this piece of incarceration and this history, I'm hearing you talking about like these family ties. Is this your own personal connection where you've been incarcerated, or is this more like, family, community, and people around you?
So no, this is me. I served time. I was arrested on exit 787 on exit 23 on 787 South, coming from Brooklyn, New York, back to Albany, where I was staying with my cousins that I originally went because I was looking for a bed, right? And when I got up there, it was so much happening. Everybody was involved really in a street trade and looking for options to make money to take care of myself. I just jumped in it, and I realized, and this is just me being really honest, that I was good at it because I had spent my younger years with my dad when he worked on Wall Street underneath his desk, listening to him crunch numbers and audit, right? I was with mom who worked for one of the big four banks, and I knew how to create plans and strategy. And I used what I had learned as a child and in the street trade. And again, I was good at it. And it was that day where we just so happened to be coming back from New York, and I was pulled over in the car, and the car, had drugs in it. And then they went into the house we lived in, and I was arrested and sentenced to almost 5 years to life, and served every bit of it as well. And it's that thought in my mind that, we often look at people who lose their name to a number, and we don't think about the roots or the systemic issues that it came from, that happened, that caused them to be in this place. I didn't choose to go in the street trade. I chose to go look for a bed, and it led me there. And so I had to really develop myself all over again and realize even now that in difficult moments we have options. And a lot of people don't realize they have options, so they find themselves in this posture of doing what they need to do to survive. And I was there not because I wasn't educated or I didn't learn, but I hadn't learned how to handle those situations. And that goes back to me talking about, as an HR pro, we often hire people that are really good at what they do, but they can't pivot when there's a problem, right? And so we have to look just beyond what you can do with your hands and think about what's happening in your heart and in your head to make sure you have the cognitive ability and the motivating factors to get you through. And as a child, I was a child, right? My brain wasn't fully developed. I had these emotional ties that had been triggered and it had experienced this trauma. And I could position myself in a situation that I faced the consequences for, and I had to accept it. And once I was released, I just wanted to find a job. I wasn't looking to build anything and to come back and to try to give back. I was just happy to be free with my one brown t-shirt and my brown wallabies showing my age, right? And I was just happy to go back home with mom, because I was going back home with mom, not going back upstate. And I was just happy to find an opportunity in a way. And it was that first job that was really difficult for me. When we come home, some of the barriers that people face when they're incarcerated is like housing and transportation, right? And healthy relationships. And for me, I had housing. Transportation was New York City Transit Authority, but career tools was a really big challenge for me. It was hard for me to develop a resume and hard for me to talk about the gap in the resume with confidence, because I didn't know how to explain to someone I was looking for an opportunity that I had made a big mistake without digging deep and sharing all my business.
Ooh, thank you so much for giving this background. I appreciate it. And also, I just think, like you said, it speaks to you recognizing, understanding where you come from, how you got there, both the good and the bad. Because I hear so many positive pieces of your childhood as well, and just like your upbringing. But also, you talking about accepting the consequences and being able to be where you are now to be able to talk about this. So thank you so much for that. Let's dive deep a little bit more into, like we're talking about, these people around us. And so how would you say family and friends play a part in building a life after being incarcerated?
Yeah, I think that community is so important, and family can be blood, or it could be people that you are really close with that have helped you along the way. I think it's one of those key things that you need to sustain. You know, you need a support system in place to help you lift and to help you continue to lead in a positive way because of the barriers and the challenges that you face when you come home. If you don't immediately find a job, it becomes an emotional experience and you start telling yourself that you can't make it. If you don't have any place to live, or you don't have any economic mobility to help you go back and forth to look for a job, then you often look for ways to do it. And sometimes it may come with a compromise. And so if you have community, you have support that can help you navigate along the way, and not just for tangible things, but also for those intangible things, like saying things like you can do it, or we have your back, or you know what, you're home now and better is possible. And so for me, it was vital that I had a home to go to and that my mother and father was there, you know. And when I served time, you know, we faced some really deep challenges, and it was there that my dad and I really rebuilt back our relationship, because I went upstate because of the challenges we began to face in the family. And dad sent me a letter one time, and the letter only said, "You only fail if you stop trying." I still have that letter today, and I always remember to keep going. And so going back home and having their support, even though I know that I had disappointed them, it was really vital for me to succeed, because recidivism is real. People often return back to prison if you don't have cash flow, you don't have capacity to look for a job, and you don't have community. So family is absolutely vital.
Absolutely. This is a two-part question. So how would you describe a good work ethic from your experience as being incarcerated change people's work ethic once they have been released?
Yeah, I think so. A good work ethic is, you know, showing up as your full self authentically, and being an entrepreneur, right? Like not an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur. You're showing up and you're taking ownership of the work that you're doing, right? And because your name, your face, and your fingerprint is on it. And after you come home, because you know, when I was growing up in Brooklyn, I did summer youth employment. I was 14 years old working at the WIC office, right? I wanted to work, but when I came home, it was different. It was different, because it was more difficult to find somebody who would hire someone that had a felony on their record. I always felt like I had to do a whole lot more. So I had to show up in this space, and not just as a felon, but as a female, and a Black female at that. And so I had all these obstacles in front of me. So I felt like I had to come with the whole jackhammer, right? And do all the stuff. I had to make sure that I represented well. I had to make sure that I had the language of the learned. I had to speak like the people I was working with, or at least close to it. Without compromising who I am. And I also had to be able to do more what I thought, because I felt like I had to prove myself. But the reality of it is that I learned is that, employers can hire the best person for the job regardless of their background. I didn't have to do more. I just had to do what Khalilah knows how to do. I just had to do what KKO was bringing to the table. And it was, what I was bringing was valuable and it was good. But when you come home, you feel like you always have to work harder to prove yourself until you begin to find value in who you are again.
Wow. Thank you for sharing about that. So we know that companies should take a chance on, formerly incarcerated folks, but can you flat out, straight up tell us why should they give a chance to formerly incarcerated folks?
Yeah, I can give you 3 reasons, because I can actually give you 100, but I'm going to give you 3 because I know we're on time. The first one is just some really factual, some data that's factual. Attrition is the lowest in the talent pool that are justice impacted. They're more inclined to stay. This is actual data. When you look at the different pools of people in the world of work today, the attrition is the lowest in people that are impacted. And it's because once they get opportunity, they want to own it, cultivate in it, and eventually grow. They're not looking just for a job. They're looking for a career opportunity. Number 2, we talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but what about diversity of thought? My lived experience becomes learned experience, and I bring this new perspective and innovation to the table to help you cultivate what's already happened internally, but help you shape these ideas to connect with people in a more unified way. We don't have to say DEI, but if it's embedded in your practices through thoughts and exchanges of people that you have in the workplace, it's already there. And number 3, I'll talk about the benefits, because there are tax benefits. You do receive a tax break for hiring people that are just as impacted. But I think more so is going back to point A and point B, that attrition rate being lower and that diversity of thought, which brings innovation. So you're going to get a tax benefit, and you're also going to get somebody that's going to stay, which would reduce your recruitment costs, and somebody that's going to help you innovate and ideate that can increase your productions and your impact. And so just those 3 areas. You can go from the block to the boardroom. That's what I did. I went from the block right on the corner, and I came to the boardroom. I knew the trade on the street, and I was able to apply that knowledge to what I did in the workplace, right? It's possible. And when we think about skills and things that we needed when we faced situations like COVID, or when George Floyd was killed, going back to having people really good at what they do and people that can pivot in a problem, most people that are justice impacted are some of the most resilient people that I know. And we need people in the workplace that can handle tough situations and still navigate and not drop the ball.
I am blown away with this idea of diversity of thought. I've never heard that before. Is this something that you kind of coined, or are people talking about this in the spaces that you're in? Can you tell a little bit more about the diversity of thought?
Yeah, I just started talking, people, especially now. So I'm going to say I coined it, because I've never heard anybody else say it besides me. And now that DEI is under attack and everybody's saying, take away the funding for it, or if you use certain language on your application, you're going to lose your funding. Okay, let's not use the language, but let's use the people that bring that diversity of thought. And we always think that diversity is about color and culture, but it's also about class, socioeconomic status. It's about demographics. It's also about age, because this is the first time in the world of work we have multiple generations in the workplace. Millennials don't want what alphas want, and alphas don't want what boomers want or Gen X want, right? And so how do we shape programs and processes internally that the people that need it can get it, and the people that don't need it eventually know it's there? And that comes with that diversity of thought. That's all of us talking. My lived experience is going to help you impact new customer bases because you may not have experienced it. There's something called tribal leadership. I saw this TED Talk, and this tribal leadership is this idea of leading at every level. But there's a level, a street level in this TED Talk that some CEOs won't never receive because they never had to lead from a street level. And so I've been fortunate. I always tell people that I learned how to lead on the street, and I know how to lead in the boardroom. I knew how to close in, and I can close at that table with 12 people sitting at the seat, right? And so, and it's because of my experiences that I'm able to show up, and I'm able to bring something different and unique into a table. In the beginning, you mentioned I used to work for a for-profit organization that hired active rival gang members. I was their chief people officer, and the CEO hired me because I knew how to speak block in boardroom. I could stand in between the gap and build a bridge with the gang and with the people that were funding it, right? And that is that diversity of thought. How do we bring people to the table that's going to challenge our traditions and our ideas and reshape what we call the world of work so that we can all come into this space and build effectively, and going back to my big word, make impact. So yes, diversity of thought.
Wow. It's love hearing about, how you're bilingual in the street and in the boardroom. I think that's
Yes,
important to highlight, right? Like you are
it is.
bilingual there.
I
And
am.
so
I am.
as you think about it, right, like you live in two worlds.
Mhm.
What have been some of the difficulties of living in these two worlds, and what have been some of the benefits for you?
Yeah, I think the difficulty is showing up in a space and having people that don't know you from the boardroom world respect you, right? When you initially come in, right? Or being in a room and somebody calls out that you are justice impacted before you get to open up your mouth. So they're judging you ahead of time, but before you say anything. And so I think the difficult component was just really showing up in the space confidently and not allowing what people's perceptions or ideas of me change who I am. Like knowing that I had to allow my experience to shape my emotional intelligence in spaces where, it may not have been accepted. And so that's always been the challenge, is coming in a room and people knowing you're just as impacted and they're like, who is this woman? And then already classifying who you are. When I go speak, I often wait till the end to tell people that my number was 99GO789, because if I tell them before, all they see is an inmate, right, on stage with a number on them. But afterwards, after I've done trained and taught and shared and built, and at the end I say, and this story is about me, they're like, oh my goodness, yay. It's more accepting right afterwards because they got to know you. Conversations challenge what you believe, and beliefs are foundational for skills. So you're going to believe whatever you want about me unless we have a conversation. So that's been a difficult part. I think some of the good components is being able to have that duality, right? I'm able to impact people in levels and in spaces and places other people would never be able to talk to, and to pull them alongside. I don't have to preach to anyone. I don't have to say you better. I just have to share my story, and I show up as evidence that you can and that better is possible if you make the decision to do what you want to do for yourself.
Wow. Thank you for
Definitely.
that breakdown. And you use the language justice impacted. Would you say that that's more appropriate language to use versus formerly incarcerated? Because as I'm hearing you say it, I'm like, that would make a little bit more sense if you're, in conversation with someone.
Yeah, so it depends on what you prefer, but I call it asset-based language, and that's language that's really building up the person and not tearing them down. So I like to use justice impacted, justice involved. Formerly incarcerated is also asset-based. It's just calling to where I previously was, and then I can call forward to where I am now. And so it's just using really that asset-based language to make sure that you're not calling anybody a name. And we don't like to be called outside of our name. And so you don't want to call somebody, and I hate to use the C word, but like a convict, right? Or a felon, even though, that is a label that people will use. When you use justice impacted, you're saying, I know where you've been, but I honor you and honor the space that you're in right now. And I respect you in this conversation.
Yes. So going off of that, can you tell us a little bit more? What are some other key terms that might make a little bit, I don't want to say make a little bit more sense, but might be, what was the word that you used?
Asset-based.
Asset
Asset.
based.
Asset.
What are some other asset based words that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so you hear second chance hire, second chance hiring, fair chance hiring, and that just is intentionally hiring the best person for the job, regardless of their background. You are intentionally looking for someone that's justice involved or justice impacted. Like you just used, formerly incarcerated is really great. I would stay away from words like convict or inmate, right? Or those people, right? We don't want to use terminology like that. And so just really calling somebody to a space of dignity that you want them to be able to maintain. So if you're talking about the person specifically, it's going to be justice impacted, justice involved, or formerly incarcerated. Those are the pools right there. And just staying away from those terms I previously mentioned.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I think that's super important. Thank you so much for gifting us with your presence today. I feel like this is an amazing topic that we need to talk about more. But at the end of our episode, we always give takeaways for our listeners. What would you say a takeaway or some takeaways would be for you today for the audience?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the opening line where you were talking about books, whether it's audio or print. Like, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Be willing to listen to it or read it before you make the decision or the choice, because, don't look at somebody based on one chapter, but read through the whole book so that you can get to understand individuals as a whole. And so that would be my takeaway.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. That was a nice way to wrap it back up to the beginning too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. We'll be back with another episode next Monday.